to my channel. Today we are going to dive into the new Urban Decay Naked palette. This is the Wild West palette. So this palette just recently launched on the Urban Decay website. This palette retails for $49. I actually picked this up on the Sephora website. It does come with a brush, but it just keeps falling out. So I gave up on keeping the brush in there. So the details on this palette is it's a vegan eyeshadow palette with 12 desert-inspired neutral eyeshadows from pale peach and metallic bronze to deep blue, green, and turquoise shimmer. You can choose from creamy mattes, metallics, and shimmers that blend seamlessly with the included dual-ended eyeshadow brush. The iconic velvety naked formula can be used solo or layered to create endless looks. That's the deets on this, you guys. We're gonna go ahead and jump into the 3 tutorials that I created using this palette, and then we will go ahead and do some swatches and comparisons, which I don't know that I'm gonna find a lot of comparisons in my collection, to be quite honest with you, because I haven't looked yet. But I don't know that I have a lot of palettes with this color combination. In my personal collection, I just can't think anything off the top of my head that would be similar to this, but I will look just to be on the safe side. And then, of course, once we get through the swatches and comparisons, I will jump into my final thoughts. So without further ado, let's get into the eyeshadow looks, and I will see you guys all in my final thoughts. So let's get into this new palette from Urban Decay, the Wild West. Of course, like all their palettes, it comes with a brush. The first look, I'm going to go into the shade Spur. I kind of want to see what that shade looks like on my skin tone. So sometimes those shades don't really show up. So I'm curious about, number one, does it show up? And number two, does it have enough depth to show up? So I am just going to start that right here in the crease and kind of blend it in. Just ignore my fake tan hands. So we're going to get that out of the way. So I have a channel where I review stuff, right? So I'm always interested in new fake tanners. And I tested out a new fake tan last night. Granted, it was at 2 o'clock in the morning, but my hands are pretty dark and they look ridiculous. Back to the eyeshadow. That shade's not showing up. I'm going to grab the shade right next to it, which is Nudie. I'm going to put it over top of that shade and see if it makes that shade underneath kind of pop. Those two shades together, not really coming up on my skin tone. Let's move down to Ghost Town. Now I'm going to try to go in with this light-handed, so I'm not going to use this brush. This brush is a little bit stiffer and it's going to apply a lot of product. So I'm going to go in with a little bit more of a wispier brush. This is the Refer number 13. I'm going to go into Ghost Town, and then I'm just going to start kind of slowly building that in the crease. I just don't want like a ton of pigment. I want to be able to control it. So, you know, sometimes using a wispier brush with a darker color, it kind of gives you that control versus going in with a stiffer brush where you're applying more pressure. You're just going to apply more pigment. So I'm just going to take the brush I was using for the other shades and blend that out. But so far I'm getting really good pigment and they're blending out really easily. Like I'm not having any issues with these shadows at all. Okay, next up I'm going to go into the shade Hold'em, which is that really beautiful gold shade. It feels like a very thin texture. So it doesn't feel like super chunky, but I am getting some fallout. It's probably best applied with a finger, but I have nails. So whenever you have nails, it's really hard to apply, especially with fake tan hands. I'm going to take my Sonia G flat definer brush and I am going to spray it just to try to control some of the fallout. Now I don't have any concealer on and stuff, but I want to be able to control that fallout. So I'm going to kind of place that here on the inner corner. Now I'm going to go into the shade Wrestler right here, like right next to that really pretty aqua color. I'm going to apply this here on the outside, and I should have sprayed because I did get some fallout right here. Rustler is more of like a really pretty kind of brown bronzy color, I would say. It's pretty bronzy. Now I am going to dip my brush in both of these shades. So I'm going to grab Hold'em and Nudie. So I'm going to grab this blending brush and dip my brush into both of them and kind of like have some of that matte to kind of sweep in here in the crease. So I'm going to kind of bring it all the way up and into the crease. Same thing with Rustler right here on next to the aqua, that shade. I want to bring that into the outer corner on the crease and just kind of softly like blend this into the outer corner. Okay, now I am going to grab the Urban Decay brush that comes with it. I'm going to grab the shade Nudie. I'm going to use Nudie to buff out that edge just to soften it just a little bit. I'm going to grab the BK Beauty 204 brush. It's like a smudge brush. And I am going to go into the shade Rustler. This one right here. I'm going to wet it because I want to be able to control the fallout. So I'm going to bring that on the lower lash line and use it as my lower lash line color. Right at the bases of the lashes. And then I'm going to take another pencil brush and I'm going to go into the shade Nudie. I'm going to use Nudie to kind of blend it out and make it look a little bit better, you know? So I did get some pretty good fallout. So if you were going to use this palette, I would do your eye makeup first, especially if you're going to use some of those shimmery shades. If you're going to do your face makeup first, I would make sure that you spray down all of those shimmer shades because I think that's what they need. They need something to kind of spray them down. Okay, so I went ahead and threw on some concealer. I'm going to go into the shade Ghost Town, and I'm going to use Ghost Town just to deepen up this lower lash line and bring some color. Nudie isn't dark enough for me to use, so I needed something to give me some color under there. So I'm just going to kind of clean this up. Okay, so this is the final look for look number one. The eyelash is hanging on by a thread, but I'm going to be wiping it off. So I was trying not to get it on too good, you know? But this is just a really pretty kind of bronzy gold look. It's nothing overly special, but definitely something that you can create with this palette. So that's it for look number one. Let's go ahead and jump into look number two. Okay, so for this look, I wanted to try the silver shade. So I'm going to grab this shade right next to it, which is called Laredo. Start with this shade. I'm excited to see what this looks like and the undertone because it definitely looks different in person than it looks in the pictures. And it blends pretty good. It's a pretty color. Okay, so let's go straight into this silver right here. I want to see what that looks like on the lid. So I'm going to use the flat definer from Sonia G. Let's go into it dry first. Not getting much pigment. Let me try a finger here really fast. Yeah, it's almost like this is so finely milled that it needs a finger. I'm going to use a felt tip applicator because I can't use my finger because it's just a little bit harder because I have nails. With your finger or a felt tip applicator is going to be the best way to apply this. It's really, really thin and very finely milled, but look how beautiful it is. So a lot of the silvers that I have are kind of chunky silvers. This is not chunky. This is very, very thin, very, like I said, very finely milled, and it is beautiful. It almost blends out to nothing because it's so finely milled. And I'm going to go into the shade Laredo. I'm going to build this up here on the outer corner and kind of blend it into the silver. Okay, now I want to go into the shade Pony Up, which is right here on the end. So I'm going to use that shade to build up some depth here on this outer corner. I'm going to go directly over top of it with the shade Laredo. And I did get quite a bit of fallout with that silver shade. So far it's been my experience with this palette. I would recommend doing your eye makeup first. Okay, for the lower lash line, I'm going to use the shade Loretto first. And then I'm going to take the BK Beauty 204 smudge brush and I'm going to grab Pony Up, this one right here on the end. Apply that right out here on the lower lash line. I think I'll bring that silver shade all the way into the inner corner. And I kind of want to bring it down and under here. So that's what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to go back in with Laredo, just buff it all together. So this is the final look for look number 2, and you could take this look so much farther. You could deepen it up in the crease if you wanted to. You could definitely build up the level of depth in this look. I decided to just leave it here, not go too far, just to kind of have it a little bit light and just softer, I guess. And I like it. I like the way that it turned out. I love that silver shade. It is so pretty. It's a little bit tricky to work with, but once you understand the texture and once you find the right tools to apply it, it's absolutely beautiful. So that's it for look number 2. Let's go ahead and jump into the third look. Let's go ahead and jump into the third look, which will be the final look. Okay, so I cleaned everything off. Let's start with the third and final look. Of course, we're going to use this shade. I am so excited about it. That's the only thing that I'm noticing with this palette that's missing, but you can grab brown from anywhere. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab my bronzer. I think any bronzer you got will work. You know how bronzers are. They work great. So I'm going to grab just a tiny bit of the bronzer just to warm up the look. I like my aqua, blue, or turquoise looks to have a more warm, neutral slash a little bit warm base to it, like in the transition. So that I was looking in the palette to see like what color I would put in the crease, and I was like, you know, I just can't find the one that would work for me in the crease. Now, if you have a lighter skin tone than I do, then nudie is totally your shade. But because there's really not that shade for me in this palette, the bronzer is pretty much the only way for me to make it work. So next up, I am going to mix the shades Ghost Town and Whiskey. So I'm going to kind of put my brush, the tip of this brush, into both of them. This is the reference number 2. And I'm going to focus this right where the line of my eyelid kind of opens and closes. Right there on that center crease. Just to give me some depth. Now I'm going to grab my blending brush, grab those 2 shades, mix them together, tap off, and kind of build this outer corner with it. Deepen it up. Now let's go into the shade Bud, this turquoise color. And it feels kind of the same texture as the silver color does. So it's very, very finely milled. So of course, with that, it's going to be your finger or a felt tip applicator. I just don't think that shade's going to apply good with a brush. Let me just show you. I'm going to take the reference number 21 brush. I'm going to pick that up, and you can apply it with a brush, but you're not going to get the impact that you would if you applied it with a finger or a felt tip applicator. And then I'm just going to apply on the lid. Oh, it's a pretty color, isn't it? I want to sharpen up this line right here as it goes into the folds of the crease. I'm going to mix these two shades again together and kind of place that here on the outer corner and kind of tap it out and blend it into the turquoise. I'm going to use a smaller like smudge brush. I'm going to mix those two shades together and get a little bit more of a direct application. That brush was just kind of blending it out a little bit more than I wanted it to. I want to pop some of the silver right here in the center just to see what that would look like, just to kind of make the center lid pop. Place it right here. Oh yeah, that silver over top of it is gorgeous. So it kind of took it from like a turquoise color to like a mint silver color. It's gorgeous. So those two colors together, absolutely stunning. Like, so pretty. So I went ahead and threw on some concealer. Now I'm going to go into the bronzer, and I'm going to bring the bronzer right up underneath the lash line just to kind of start as a base to bring that warmth. So as far as the inner corner highlight, I think I'm just going to use that silver color, and I'm going to go into Cowboy Rick and place it right here on the inner corner. And I'm going to mix these two shades again. So Whiskey and Ghost Town, I'm just going to kind of mix them together and just smoke that into the lower lash line. Just kind of buffing it in to create the depth. Okay, so this is the final look, and I love the way that this eyeshadow look turned out. It's so beautiful, and I just love it. I also really love that silver over top of that turquoise shade. I think it just really brought it to life in such a beautiful way right there on the center of the lid. So those two shades pair beautifully together. As far as my lip combination, I'm wearing the lip liner from St. Luxe in the shade Secret Admirer. I think I got this in a BoxyCharm. It's a really beautiful shade. And then I am wearing the lipstick from Wayne Goss in the shade Dahlia. I thought it was a perfect combination for this eye makeup. So that's it for look number 3. Let's go ahead and jump straight into the swatches and comparisons. And then of course I will get into my final thoughts. So I will see you guys then. Okay, so let me go ahead and jump into my final thoughts about this palette. Let me say this. This is a very unique color story, for me anyway. I looked and looked and looked and just didn't really find anything with this combination. So that is a good thing. The shades blended really beautifully, and the silver and the turquoise blue, once you get the right applicator to apply them, whether it's your finger or a felt tip applicator, worked great for me. I think you will fall in love with those shades. Like I recommended in the actual tutorials, those are type of shades that you have to have the right applicator. Like, you have to have the right brush. And I can tell that this is a different type of formula. It's not a thick, kind of chunky formula where you can apply it with pretty much any brush. These are very, very finely milled, and if you really want that impact, you're gonna need to find something that will give you that, whether it's your finger or a felt tip applicator, or, you know, I would kind of play around with some of your brushes if you don't have any felt tip applicators, but they are very affordable. I have a packet from e.l.f. that I bought for like $2 or $3, and you can buy felt tip applicators anywhere. They have them on Amazon, they have them at the drugstore, and I really enjoy using felt tip applicators to apply shimmer shades, especially these type of shimmer shades. Now, as far as the mattes, I had no problems with the blending. In fact, I think these shades blend just like any of their other Naked palettes. I didn't really feel like there was a lot of differences between the way that the shadows work. I think this palette is perfect for light skin tones and like deeper skin tones, but the middle skin tone category like me, there wasn't really a transition shade, which made me have to go into my bronzer, which I'm totally fine with. But I'm just saying, for the palette, these 3 shades were a little bit unnecessary. I think we could have went away with this first shade, maybe made this the first shade, pushed this to this one, and then the shade that would go here could be like a neutral or a warm tone brown. I think this palette was missing a warm tone brown, especially when you have some of these darker shades over here. But like I said in my tutorial, we all have warm tone browns, whether you have it in a bronzer or another palette. So it's not a deal breaker, okay? I'm just saying. But this is a really beautiful palette. However, with that said, this is not a palette that I will probably get a lot of use out of. For me, this is a type of color story that you really need to love and think that you will pick up often in order to justify the $49. I don't know that this is a color story that I will pick up that much. I'm going to be completely honest. If I do pick this palette up, it'll probably be to get this turquoise shade that I have on my lid. I don't really feel like I will use this palette all that much. I think you have to love the color story in order to kind of justify the splurge. The reason why I say that is because a lot of their Naked palettes are everyday palettes, right? So all of the like Naked Heat and Naked 2, 3, all of those palettes were everyday palettes that people used on a regular daily basis. So this one is a little bit outside the box on their Naked palettes. But even though they went outside the box, I do think it's very creative to come out of the box with something like this. I think you have to really love the color story in order to use it like you would other Urban Decay Naked palettes, if that makes sense. Just from a very personal perspective, I don't think I'll use it that much. But talking about the formula and the way that everything applied, it was beautiful. I didn't have any issues. Absolutely no issues. Of course, there was some suggestions that I would change about the palette, but overall, it's an A+ palette. It is. It's a great palette. I don't have any complaints as far as formula or anything. Now, I will also mention, if you have a deeper skin tone, this palette's going to work great for you because these shades over here on the end have a lot of pigment. So much pigment that I wanted to kind of be careful with them and kind of apply them with a very light hand. So if you have a deeper skin tone, this is going to be a great palette for you. If you have a lighter skin tone, it's going to be a great palette for you because you have these shades to work with to use as transition shades and then deepen things up with these shades out here on the end. So those are my thoughts on this Wild West palette from Urban Decay. Sound off down below in the comments section. Let us know, have you guys picked up this palette? And if so, do you love it? Do you not like it? Share with us. Like I've always said, your guys' opinion is just as important as anyone else's that's coming on behind a camera. So definitely share your guys' thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me in today's video. I hope that you guys all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in my next video. Love you. Bye.